The blood-soaked snow glistened crimson beneath the pale winter moon as Violet Lawson fought to remain conscious, her trembling fingers pressing against the bullet wound in her side. The Wyoming wilderness stretched endlessly around her, beautiful and merciless in the winter of 1876, caring nothing for the dying woman who crawled through its pristine drifts. Violet had been on the run for 3 days. 3 days of terror and exhaustion since escaping the men who had murdered her father and burned their homestead to the ground. Her horse had been shot out from under her hours ago, sending her tumbling down a snowy embankment. Now, as night fell and temperatures plummeted, she knew she was running out of time. The sound of hoofbeats made her heart stutter with fear. Had they found her? She tried to crawl beneath the shelter of a pine, leaving a ghastly trail of red in her wake. Her vision blurred, the world tilting at odd angles as she pressed herself against the rough bark and prayed for invisibility. The rider approached slowly, his horse's breath pluming in the frigid air. He was tall and broad-shouldered, his features obscured by the shadow of his hat and the woolen scarf wrapped around the lower half of his face. "Hello." His voice was deep, cautious. "Is someone there?" Violet remained silent, though her ragged breathing surely betrayed her position. The stranger dismounted, his boots crunching in the snow as he followed the blood trail. "I am not going to hurt you," he said, crouching down to peer beneath the branches. "Good Lord," he whispered when he saw her. "You are bleeding something fierce, miss." "Go away," Violet managed through chattering teeth. "Cannot do that." He removed his gloves and reached toward her. "I am Adam Everett. I have a cabin about 2 miles from here. Let me help you." When she tried to push him away, her strength failed her entirely. The last thing Violet saw before consciousness slipped away was a pair of concerned blue eyes studying her face. Adam worked quickly, removing his coat to wrap it around the wounded woman. He tore strips from his shirt to bind the bullet wound in her side, his practiced hands moving with the efficiency of someone who had dealt with such injuries before. The woman was young, perhaps 22 or 23, with dark hair matted with snow and blood. Her skin was alarmingly pale beneath the dirt and grime of hard travel. "Hang on," he murmured, though he doubted she could hear him. "Just hang on." He lifted her carefully, cradling her against his chest as he carried her to his horse. With some difficulty, he managed to mount while holding her, arranging her across his lap so that her wound would not be aggravated during the ride. The journey back to his cabin seemed interminable, the winter night growing deeper and colder with each passing minute. His horse picked its way carefully through the snow, understanding the urgency without needing to be told. Adam's cabin appeared through the trees, a humble structure that had been his refuge for the past 3 years. Smoke curled from the chimney he had banked the fire before leaving to check his traps, a decision that now seemed providential. The woman needed warmth, desperately. He dismounted awkwardly, still holding her, and managed to open the door with his elbow. The blessed heat of the cabin enveloped them as he carried her inside and laid her gently on his bed. Working methodically, he built up the fire, heated water, and gathered his meager medical supplies. He had learned field medicine during the war, skills he had hoped never to use again. The woman's clothes were soaked with blood and snow. Adam hesitated, then carefully cut away enough fabric to expose the wound without removing more of her clothing than absolutely necessary. The bullet had torn through her side, missing vital organs but leaving a nasty gash that continued to seep blood. "Lucky," he murmured. "Very lucky indeed." He cleaned the wound carefully, applied a poultice of herbs he had learned to use from an old Cheyenne man, and bandaged it tightly. Throughout his ministrations, she did not stir, though her breathing remained steady if shallow. Adam covered her with every blanket he possessed, then set about making a pallet for himself near the fire. As he worked, he wondered about this mysterious woman and what had brought her to such desperate circumstances. Bullet wounds typically meant trouble, and trouble was something Adam had sworn to avoid, yet he could not have left her to die in the snow. Whatever complications she might bring to his carefully constructed solitude, his conscience would never have allowed such callousness. As he settled onto his makeshift bed, Adam studied her face in the firelight. Even in unconsciousness, a furrow of worry marked her brow. He wondered what she was running from and whether it would follow her to his door. Violet awakened to warmth and the unfamiliar scent of pine and coffee. For a moment, she lay perfectly still, taking inventory of her body. Pain throbbed in her side, but it was duller now, more manageable. Her clothes had been changed. She wore a man's shirt that dwarfed her frame. Alarm shot through her until she realized she still wore her undergarments beneath it. The events of the previous night came back to her in fragments: the cold, the blood, a deep voice promising safety. She opened her eyes slowly to find herself in a small but tidy cabin. A fire crackled in the stone hearth, and sunlight streamed through a single window, illuminating dancing dust motes. "You are awake." The voice came from her right. Violet turned her head to see the man from last night sitting at a rough-hewn table, a steaming mug between his hands. In daylight, she could see him clearly, perhaps 30 years old, with weathered skin and eyes the color of a summer sky. His dark blonde hair was overly long, as if haircuts were a luxury rarely indulged in, and a beard covered his jaw. "Where am I?" Her voice came out as a croak. "My cabin, about 20 miles northeast of Laramie." He stood and approached, offering a cup of water. "Careful now, small sips." Violet drank gratefully, the cool water soothing her parched throat. "You saved my life." "You were shot," he said, his voice matter of fact. "The wound is not too severe, but you lost a fair amount of blood, and the cold nearly took you. May I ask your name, miss?" She hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "Violet Lawson." "Miss Lawson," he nodded. "I am Adam Everett, former Union Army, now just a trapper living a quiet life. Thank you for helping me, Mr. Everett." She tried to sit up and gasped as pain lanced through her side. "Easy," he cautioned, moving to adjust the pillows behind her. "That wound needs time to heal. You will be my guest for a few days at least." Violet's heart sank. She did not have a few days. "I cannot stay. They will be looking for me." Adam's expression grew serious. "Who is looking for you, Miss Lawson?" She looked away, unwilling to draw this kind man into her troubles. "It does not matter. I need to keep moving." "In your condition, you would not make it 5 miles. His voice was gentle but firm. "Whoever you are running from, they will not find you here. My cabin is well hidden, and the snow that fell last night will have covered your tracks." Tears welled in Violet's eyes, unexpected and unwelcome. She blinked them back furiously. "You do not understand. These men, they killed my father. They will not stop until they find me too." Adam sat on the edge of the bed, his face grim. "I understand more than you might think, Miss Lawson. Tell me what happened." The kindness in his voice broke something inside her. The story spilled out in halting sentences: how land speculators had been pressuring her father to sell their ranch, how he had refused, how 3 men had come in the night. She had hidden in the root cellar as they shot her father and set fire to their home. When they discovered her missing, they had hunted her for days through the wilderness. "They work for a man named Victor Dalton," she finished. "He wants our land because there is a natural spring on it, valuable water rights for the railroad he is invested in." Adam's jaw tightened. "Dalton." "I know the name. He has a reputation for getting what he wants, regardless of who stands in his way." I need to get to my uncle in Denver, Violet said. He is a lawyer. He can help me prove what Dalton did. You will get there, Adam assured her. But first you need to heal. We are in the depths of winter, Miss Lawson. The passes south are likely snowed in already. Even if you were not injured, travel would be dangerous. The logic of his words could not be denied, though frustration gnawed at her. I cannot impose on you for months. A small smile touched his lips. I am not exactly overwhelmed with social engagements, Miss Lawson, and I would not turn anyone out to face a Wyoming winter alone, especially not someone being hunted by Victor Dalton's men. His kindness overwhelmed her. Why would you risk yourself for a stranger? Adam stood and moved to the window, gazing out at the snow-covered landscape. I came here seeking solitude, not to abandon my humanity. Besides, he added, turning back to her with a wry expression, I have some experience dealing with men like Dalton. Violet studied him, sensing there was much more to his story than he was revealing. But exhaustion was pulling at her again, the brief conversation having depleted her limited reserves of energy. Rest now, Adam said, noticing her drooping eyelids. We can talk more later. You are safe here, Miss Lawson. I give you my word. As she drifted back to sleep, Violet wondered at how quickly life could change, how she could go from fighting for survival in the bitter cold to being cared for by a stranger whose quiet strength somehow made her feel safer than she had in days. The next week passed in a haze of sleep and recovery for Violet. Adam proved to be an attentive but unobtrusive caretaker, changing her bandages with clinical efficiency, preparing simple but nourishing meals, and giving her space when she needed it. As her strength returned, Violet learned more about her reluctant host. Adam was a man of few words but considerable skills. He had come to Wyoming after the war, seeking peace in the wilderness after the horrors he had witnessed as a Union soldier. He trapped for furs in the winter, prospected a little in summer, and generally kept to himself. "Have you always been a hermit?" she asked one evening as they shared a rabbit stew he had prepared. Adam's lips quirked. "Not always. I had a life before, a family farm in Pennsylvania, no wife." "Children?" A shadow crossed his face. "No. There was someone once, but the war changed me. She deserved better than what I became." Violet recognized the pain in his voice, the same pain she heard when her father spoke of her mother who had died when Violet was just 12. "I am sorry." He shrugged. "It was a long time ago." On the 10th day, Violet insisted on getting up and moving around the cabin. Her side still ached, but the wound was healing well under Adam's care. She felt useless lying in bed while he did all the work of maintaining the cabin. "At least let me help with the cooking," she said, watching him chop vegetables for a stew. "I am not completely helpless." "I never thought you were," he replied, handing her the knife with a small smile. "Though I should warn you, my culinary standards are rather low after 3 years of my own cooking." Violet laughed, the sound surprising them both. It felt strange to laugh after everything that had happened, yet somehow right in the warmth of this cabin with this quiet, decent man. As January gave way to February, they fell into a companionable routine. Adam would head out in the mornings to check his trap lines, returning by midday with whatever game he had caught. Violet would prepare meals, mend clothes, and keep the cabin in order. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire, sometimes talking, sometimes sharing comfortable silence. Adam had a small collection of books, poetry by Whitman, novels by Dickens and Twain, a well-worn Bible, and they took turns reading aloud to pass the time. Violet found herself looking forward to these quiet evenings more than she would have thought possible. One night, as a blizzard howled outside, Adam stoked the fire and settled into his chair with a troubled expression. "What is it?" Violet asked. setting aside the shirt she was mending. "I heard something in town today," he said. He had ridden to a small trading post 15 miles away to exchange furs for supplies. "There are men asking questions about a young woman on the run. They are offering a substantial reward for information." Fear, which had receded during her weeks of safety, came rushing back. "Dalton's men," Adam nodded. "They described you, said you were wanted for stealing from your employer in Cheyenne." "That is a lie," Violet exclaimed. "I have never been to Cheyenne in my life." "I know," Adam said calmly. "But it is a convenient story, and one that makes people more willing to turn you in than if they admitted they were hunting you for witnessing a murder." Violet wrapped her arms around herself. "How close are they?" "They have been searching areas to the south and west." "It seems they lost your trail during the snowstorm the night I found you." He leaned forward. "But we should be prepared. Once the snow begins to melt, they might expand their search area." "I have put you in danger," Violet said, the realization hitting her with sickening force. "If they find me here, they will not," Adam interrupted. "And if they did, I can handle myself." The conviction in his voice gave her pause. There was steel beneath his quiet exterior, a hardness born of experiences she could only guess at. For the first time, she wondered exactly what Adam had done during the war that had marked him so deeply. "We have time," he continued. "The passes will remain closed for at least another month. By then, your wound will be fully healed and we can plan your journey to Denver more carefully." Violet studied him, this man who had become her protector, her friend, and perhaps something more, though neither of them had spoken of the growing tension between them, the way their eyes sometimes met and held for a moment too long. "Why are you doing all this for me?" she asked softly. "You could have left me in town weeks ago once I was well enough to travel." Adam was silent for a long moment, his eyes on the flames. "Perhaps I grew tired of solitude," he finally said. "Or perhaps—" He looked up, meeting her gaze directly. "Perhaps I recognized something in you. A determination to survive, to fight back against those who would take everything from you. I respect that." Warmth blossomed in Violet's chest that had nothing to do with the fire. "I respect you too, Adam, more than I can say." The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken possibilities. Then Adam cleared his throat and stood. "It is getting late. We should both get some rest." As Violet lay in bed that night, listening to the wind howl around the cabin, she realized something that both thrilled and terrified her. She was falling in love with Adam Everett. And she had no idea what to do about it. February brought more snow and bitter cold, keeping them confined to the cabin for days at a time. The forced proximity only heightened Violet's awareness of Adam, his quiet strength, his gentle hands, the rare but transformative smile that made her heart skip. She caught him watching her sometimes, his blue eyes filled with an emotion she dared not name. Yet neither of them crossed the invisible line that separated friendship from something deeper. Adam maintained a careful physical distance, sleeping on his pallet by the fire while she took his bed, never touching her except when necessary to check her healing wound. One morning, Violet awoke to find Adam already gone, a note explaining he had seen deer tracks and gone hunting. With time alone a rarity, she decided to indulge in the luxury of a proper bath. She heated water, filled the metal tub Adam kept for such purposes, and sank gratefully into the steaming water. The bullet wound had healed to a puckered scar, still pink but no longer painful. Her body, which had grown thin during her desperate flight, had regained some of its curves thanks to Adam's simple but nourishing cooking. She was just stepping out of the tub when the cabin door flew open. Adam stood frozen in the doorway, a gutted deer slung over his shoulders, his eyes wide with shock. "I am sorry," he exclaimed, quickly turning his back. "I did not think I should have knocked." Violet grabbed for a blanket, wrapping it around herself as her face flamed with embarrassment. "It is all right," she managed, though her heart was racing. "Just give me a moment." She dressed hastily in the clothes Adam had procured for her from the trading post, simple but practical garments that fit her reasonably well. "You can turn around now." Adam did so cautiously, his own face flushed beneath his beard. "I apologize, Miss Lawson. That was unforgivably thoughtless of me." The formality in his address stung after weeks of using her given name. "It was an accident, Adam. And please, after all this time, I think you can call me Violet." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "Violet," he agreed. He hoisted the deer carcass. "I should hang this outside." After he left, Violet pressed her hands to her hot cheeks. The way he had looked at her in that unguarded moment, before embarrassment overtook them both, there had been hunger in his eyes, a raw appreciation that made her pulse quicken even in memory. That evening, an awkward tension hung between them as they prepared the venison for smoking and storage. Adam was more reserved than usual, keeping conversation to practical matters, avoiding her eyes. Unable to bear it any longer, Violet finally spoke up as they sat down to eat. "Are we going to pretend all day that nothing happened?" Adam looked up, startled. "I thought that was what you would prefer, to spare your embarrassment." "I am not embarrassed," Violet said, though it wasn't entirely true. "I am. I do not know what I am." She took a deep breath. "Adam, I have been here for nearly a month. In that time you have been nothing but kind and respectful. You have saved my life, cared for me, protected me, yet you treat me as if—" She faltered. "As if what?" he asked quietly. "As if I might break, or as if you are afraid to be too near me." She met his gaze directly. "Why?" Adam set down his fork. "Because I am afraid," he admitted. "Not of you, but of myself, of what I feel when I look at you." The simple honesty of his words made her breath catch. "And what do you feel?" He stood abruptly, moving to the window to stare out at the snowy darkness. "Things I have no right to feel. You are young, Violet. You have your whole life ahead of you. I am a broken man living alone in the wilderness because I cannot face the world anymore." "That is not how I see you at all," Violet said, rising to join him. "I see a man of honor and courage. A man who risked his safety for a stranger. A man who makes me feel—" She hesitated, gathering her courage. "A man who makes me feel things I have never felt before." Adam turned to her, his expression a mixture of hope and anguish. "You cannot know what you are saying. You have been isolated here, dependent on me. It is natural to confuse gratitude with deeper feelings." "Do not tell me what I feel," Violet said with sudden fire. "I am not a child, Adam. I know my own heart." "And what does your heart tell you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Instead of answering with words, Violet rose on her tiptoes and pressed her lips to his for a moment. Adam remained perfectly still. Then, with a sound that was half groan and half sigh, his arms came around her, pulling her against him as he deepened the kiss. His beard was soft against her skin, his mouth warm and insistent. Violet wound her arms around his neck, losing herself in the sensations flooding through her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Adam rested his forehead against hers. "I have wanted to do that since the day you first opened your eyes in my cabin," he confessed. "Why did you wait so long?" she asked, smiling up at him. His expression sobered. "Because once we leave this cabin, once spring comes and you go to Denver, everything changes. I have nothing to offer you, Violet. No home but this wilderness, no future but solitude." "Perhaps I want wilderness," she countered. "Perhaps I want you." Adam cupped her face in his calloused hands. "You deserve better than a man haunted by ghosts. Let me be the judge of what I deserve." She covered his hands with her own. Tell me about these ghosts, Adam. Let me understand. He sighed deeply, then led her to sit before the fire. For the first time, he spoke at length about his experiences during the war, the friends he had lost, the horrors he had witnessed, the actions that still haunted his dreams. He had been a sharpshooter, one of the best in his regiment, responsible for taking lives from a distance with cold precision. "I killed dozens of men," he said, staring into the flames. "Young men who were just following orders, same as me. I came home changed, unable to sleep without seeing their faces. My family did not recognize the man who returned to them." His voice grew softer. "Elizabeth, the woman I was to marry, tried to understand, but how could she? How could anyone who had not seen what I had seen? So you came west," Violet said gently. Adam nodded. "I thought distance might help, a new place far from reminders, and it has in some ways. But the wilderness is both a refuge and a prison, Violet. Until you arrived, I had not realized how lonely I had become." Violet took his hand, turning it over to trace the lines of his palm. "The past shapes us, but it need not define our future. My father used to say that." "Your father sounds like a wise man." He was. Violet swallowed against the grief that still rose whenever she thought of him. "And he would tell you that sometimes life gives us second chances when we least expect them." Adam studied her face in the firelight. "Is that what this is?" "A second chance? I hope so," she whispered. "For both of us." He pulled her into his arms then, holding her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. And for that night, at least, the ghosts that haunted them both seemed to retreat, unable to compete with the warmth they found in each other's embrace. As February turned to March, the weather began to moderate. The snow remained deep, but the sun shone more frequently, bringing a hint of the spring to come. With it came a subtle shift in Adam and Violet's relationship. They moved together like dancers, learning each other's rhythm, sometimes awkward, sometimes in perfect harmony. Adam remained respectful of boundaries, never presuming more than Violet was ready to give. But there were kisses now, tender touches, nights spent talking until dawn about their pasts, their dreams, the uncertain future that awaited them. Violet learned that beneath Adam's quiet exterior lay a man of deep feeling and surprising humor. He told stories of his childhood in Pennsylvania, of misadventures during his first year in the Wyoming wilderness, of the old Cheyenne man who had taught him to track and hunt. In turn, she shared memories of her father, of growing up on their small ranch, of her dreams of someday becoming a teacher. "You still could," Adam said one evening as they sat side by side on the cabin's small porch, watching the sunset paint the snow-covered landscape in shades of gold and pink. "When this is all over, when Dalton is brought to justice." "Perhaps," Violet said, leaning against his shoulder, "though my dreams have changed somewhat of late." Adam's arm tightened around her. "Have they?" She tilted her face up to his. "I never dreamed I would find someone like you in the middle of nowhere, bleeding in the snow." His kiss was gentle, reverential. "Nor I you, though I wish the circumstances had been different." A comfortable silence fell between them as they watched the stars appear one by one in the deepening twilight. "We should leave soon," Adam said finally. "The snow is melting in the lower elevations. Another 2 weeks, and the pass to Denver should be passable." Violet felt a pang at the thought of leaving this cabin that had become a sanctuary. "What will happen once we reach Denver? We will find your uncle. Present your testimony about what happened to your father. With a lawyer's help, we can bring Dalton to justice." "And after?" she asked, voicing the question that had been on her mind for weeks. Adam was silent for a long moment. "That depends," he said finally. "On what?" He turned to face her fully. "On whether you would consider a future with a man like me." I know I am not what your father would have wanted for you. My father would have loved you, Violet interrupted. He valued honesty, hard work, and kindness above all else. You embody all three. Hope flickered in Adam's eyes. Even so, I have little to offer. This cabin, a life in the wilderness. I do not care about possessions or comfort, Violet said. I care about you, about us. These weeks together. They have been the most difficult of my life in many ways, yet also the most meaningful. Adam took her hands in his. If we do this, if we try to build a life together, it will not be easy. Dalton is a powerful man. Even if we succeed in bringing him to justice, there may be consequences. I am not afraid, Violet said, and realized it was true. The terror that had driven her through the snow all those weeks ago had been replaced by something stronger, a determination to reclaim her life, to seek justice, to build something new from the ashes of tragedy. Whatever comes, we will face it together. Adam's smile was like the breaking of dawn. Together, he echoed, sealing the promise with a kiss. 2 days later, as they were preparing for their eventual journey, Adam returned from checking his traps with a troubled expression. "What is it?" Violet asked, recognizing the tension in his shoulders. "Tracks," he said grimly. 3 men on horseback moving through the valley below. They could be trappers or prospectors, but you do not think so, Violet finished, her stomach clenching with fear. Adam shook his head. They are moving in a search pattern. And they are armed. I saw rifle scabbards on their saddles through my spyglass. Dalton's men. The words came out as barely more than a whisper. How did they find us? They have not found us yet, Adam said, moving to the window to scan the surrounding forest. My cabin is well hidden, and they are still a few miles off, but we need to prepare for the possibility they will come this way. He spent the next hour gathering supplies, ammunition for his rifle, food that would travel well, extra clothing for both of them. Violet worked alongside him, packing efficiently, trying to ignore the trembling in her hands. If they come, Adam said as they worked, we have 2 options. We can try to slip away before they arrive, or we can stand and fight. Fighting 3 armed men seems foolish, Violet said. Especially when we could avoid confrontation entirely. Adam nodded, though she could see the reluctance in his eyes. This was his home, and the thought of abandoning it clearly pained him. You are right, but traveling through snow with men hunting us brings its own dangers. We have done it before, Violet reminded him with a small smile. Both of us. His expression softened. So we have. He checked the loading of his rifle, then placed it carefully by the door. We will leave at first light tomorrow. Head east through the high country, then south toward Denver once we are clear. That night, as they lay side by side on Adam's bed, Violet could not sleep. The thought of Dalton's men so close, the prospect of flight through the wilderness, the fear that all they had found together might be lost, it was too much. Adam seemed to sense her distress. He pulled her closer, his warmth a bulwark against the fears that threatened to overwhelm her. "Adam," she whispered in the darkness, "if something happens to me, nothing will happen to you," he interrupted fiercely. "I will not allow it. But if it does," she persisted, needing to say this, "I want you to know these weeks with you have been the happiest of my life." Adam was silent for a long moment. Then he shifted, rising up on one elbow to look down at her, his face silvered by the moonlight streaming through the window. "I love you, Violet Lawson," he said simply. "I did not expect to find love again, especially not in such circumstances, but there it is. I love you, and I will do everything in my power to keep you safe." Tears welled in Violet's eyes. "I love you too," she whispered, reaching up to touch his face. "So much it frightens me sometimes." He kissed her then, a kiss different from those they had shared before, deeper, more urgent, filled with all the emotion words could not express. Violet responded in kind, her arms winding around his neck to pull him closer. What followed was a union both tender and passionate, a coming together of bodies and souls. In the face of danger, in the shadow of uncertain tomorrows, they found in each other a momentary haven, a perfect connection that transcended fear. Afterward, as they lay entwined, Adam's heart beat strong beneath her cheek. Violet felt a curious peace settle over her. Whatever came tomorrow, they would face it as one. Dawn was just breaking when the sound of approaching horses woke them. Adam was up in an instant, moving to the window with his rifle in hand. 3 riders, he said, his voice taut, coming up the trail. Violet dressed hurriedly, her heart pounding. How did they find us? Does not matter now, Adam said grimly. We need to go. Now. They grabbed their prepared packs, moving with the efficiency of those who know time is short. Adam led her to the back of the cabin where a small door opened onto the forest behind. Stay in the trees, he instructed. Head northeast. I will be right behind you. You are coming now, Violet insisted, gripping his arm. We go together. Adam hesitated, then nodded. Together. They slipped out into the pre-dawn chill, keeping low as they made their way into the dense forest behind the cabin. The snow was crusted and firm, holding their weight without giving way small mercies for which Violet was deeply grateful. They had gone perhaps 50 yards when a shout echoed from the direction of the cabin. Tracks here, fresh ones. Run, Adam whispered, and they abandoned stealth for speed, plunging deeper into the forest as the sounds of pursuit grew behind them. A shot cracked through the morning air, the bullet splintering bark from a tree just ahead of them. Violet ducked instinctively, her breath coming in gasps as they ran. Adam pulled her behind the shelter of a massive pine, his rifle ready. Keep going, he urged. I will hold them off, then catch up. No, Violet clutched at him. I will not leave you. Another shot rang out, closer this time. Adam's jaw set in a hard line. Violet, please. I cannot bear the thought of them hurting you. Nor I you, she countered. We stay together. That was our promise. Indecision warred in his expression for a heartbeat. Then he nodded, took her hand, and they ran again, weaving through the trees, using every bit of cover available. The pursuit continued relentlessly. Dalton's men were experienced trackers, and though Adam did his best to lead them on a confusing path, the morning light made their trail all too visible in the snow. They came to a small ravine, the sides steep but navigable. Adam helped Violet down, then followed, both of them sliding more than climbing in their haste. At the bottom, a frozen stream offered a potential path. This way, Adam said, leading her onto the ice. The water beneath will mask our scent if they have dogs. They moved as quickly as they dared on the slippery surface, following the stream as it wound through the ravine. Behind them, voices echoed, growing fainter as distance, and the twisting path of the ravine separated them from their pursuers. For an hour they followed the stream, eventually leaving it to climb the far side of the ravine and continue through the forest. The ground began to rise, the trees thinning as they ascended. We are approaching the ridge, Adam said, his breath coming in clouds in the cold air. Once we cross it, we will be out of their immediate search area. Hope surged in Violet's chest. They might make it. They might actually escape. The ridge loomed ahead, rocky and steep but not impassable. They began to climb, using trees and outcroppings for handholds. Near the top, Adam reached back to help Violet over a particularly difficult section. That was when the shot came. It seemed to happen in slow motion, the crack of the rifle, Adam's body jerking, his face registering surprise before pain. He stumbled, nearly falling backward down the slope. Adam! Violet screamed, grabbing his coat to steady him. Blood blossomed on his left shoulder, staining the fabric of his coat a vivid crimson. "I am all right," he gasped, though his face had gone pale. "Keep moving." Another shot kicked up snow near their feet. Violet looked back to see 3 men ascending the ravine, one pausing to aim his rifle again. With desperate strength, she helped Adam over the remaining distance to the top of the ridge. Once there, they found themselves on a narrow plateau, the land dropping away steeply on the far side. "There," Adam said, pointing with his good arm to a stand of pines about 50 yards away. "We can take cover there." They half ran, half stumbled across the open ground, Adam leaning heavily on Violet. His blood left a stark trail in the snow behind them, a trail their pursuers could not miss. They reached the pines just as another shot rang out, the bullet whining past them to bury itself in a tree trunk. Adam collapsed against a pine, his breathing labored, his face ashen. "Let me see," Violet said, carefully removing his coat to examine the wound. The bullet had gone clean through his shoulder, missing bone but leaving a nasty hole that continued to bleed freely. Working quickly, she packed the wound with clean bandages from their supplies, binding it as tightly as she dared. Adam watched her face, his eyes glazed with pain but alert. "You would have made a fine nurse," he said, attempting a smile that turned into a grimace. "Be still," she admonished, though her hands were gentle. "We need to stop the bleeding." "There is no time," Adam said, nodding toward the ridge. Their pursuers had reached the top and were scanning the plateau. "They will find us soon." "Then we keep moving," Violet said firmly, helping him to his feet. "Lean on me." They continued through the pines, moving as quietly as they could, heading downslope toward the eastern side of the ridge. Adam's weight grew heavier against her as they walked, his steps becoming uneven. "I am slowing you down," he muttered after they had gone perhaps half a mile. "You should go on ahead." "We have discussed this," Violet said, her voice allowing no argument. "Together or not at all." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You are the most stubborn woman I have ever met, Violet Lawson." "Thank you," she replied, adjusting her grip around his waist. "Now keep walking." The eastern side of the ridge descended into a series of smaller hills, eventually leading to a valley bisected by a larger stream not yet thawed, but with patches of open water visible where the current ran swiftest. Beyond that, more forested hills stretched toward the horizon. "If we can cross that stream," Adam said, "we have a chance. The terrain beyond is complex, many places to hide, to double back, to lose pursuers." Violet nodded, focusing on putting one foot in front of the other, on keeping Adam upright and moving. His face was now the color of parchment, his lips tinged with blue. The bandage on his shoulder was soaked through with blood, but there was no time to change it, no place to stop and properly tend to his wound. They were perhaps halfway down the eastern slope when shouts echoed behind them. Glancing back, Violet saw their pursuers at the edge of the pine stand, pointing in their direction. "They have spotted us," she said, fear lending speed to her tired legs. Adam straightened, summoning reserves of strength she could only marvel at. "Then we run." Run they did, stumbling and sliding down the snowy slope, using trees to break their descent when the grade grew too steep. Behind them, more shouts, the sounds of pursuit growing closer. A shot rang out, then another, bullets kicking up snow around them. Violet flinched but kept moving, her arm locked around Adam's waist, his around her shoulders. They reached the bottom of the slope and pushed on toward the stream, now only a quarter-mile away. The ground here was more level, offering less cover but easier going. Adam's breathing had grown ragged, each exhale tinged with a worrying wheeze, but his steps remained determined. Another shot, this one striking a tree just ahead of them. Splinters of bark cut Violet's cheek, drawing blood. Adam pulled her closer, shielding her with his body as best he could while they ran. The stream appeared before them, its surface a patchwork of ice and dark, flowing water. They paused at the edge, assessing. "It is not completely frozen," Violet observed, her breath coming in gasps. "We will have to wade." Adam nodded grimly. "The water will be dangerously cold. Once across, we need to find shelter quickly, or hypothermia will become as great a threat as the bullets." Violet glanced back. Their pursuers were now visible at the bottom of the slope, perhaps 500 yards behind them. "No choice," she said. "We go now." They stepped onto the ice near the bank, testing its strength. It cracked ominously but held. Carefully, they began to make their way across, staying close to visible areas of thicker ice, avoiding the open patches of flowing water where possible. Halfway across, disaster struck. The ice beneath Adam gave way with a sudden crack, plunging him into the frigid water up to his chest. He cried out, more in shock than pain, his good arm flailing for purchase. Violet dropped to her knees, spreading her weight across the ice, and reached for him. "Take my hand," he grasped her outstretched hand, his own already numbed by the icy water. With desperate strength, Violet pulled, dragging him partially onto more solid ice. The wound in his shoulder had reopened, fresh blood staining the water around him. A bullet hit the ice just inches from Adam's head, sending up a spray of frozen shards. Their pursuers had reached the bank and were taking careful aim. "Go," Adam gasped, trying to push Violet away. "Save yourself." "Not without you," she insisted, continuing to pull him from the water with strength born of desperation. Another shot, another near miss. Then, miraculously, the sound of return fire, not from Adam or Violet, but from somewhere on the far bank. "Get down," a voice called. "We will cover you." Violet looked up to see two men positioned among the trees on the eastern bank, rifles aimed at Dalton's men. One fired again, the shot sending one of their pursuers diving for cover. With renewed hope, Violet redoubled her efforts to pull Adam from the water. He was shivering violently now, his movements sluggish, but between them they managed to get him fully onto the ice. "Crawl," Violet urged, demonstrating by moving forward on her stomach, distributing her weight. Adam followed her lead, though his movements were becoming increasingly uncoordinated as the cold took its toll. The exchange of gunfire continued as they made their painful way across the remaining ice. One of Dalton's men fell, clutching his leg. The other two retreated to the cover of the trees, their shots becoming more sporadic. Finally, Violet's hands touched the eastern bank. She scrambled up, then turned to help Adam. His skin was blue-white, his eyes unfocused, but he was still conscious, still fighting. "Almost there," she encouraged, pulling him onto solid ground. "Just a little further." One of the strangers approached, keeping low to avoid the occasional shot still coming from across the stream. He was an older man, perhaps 50, with a weathered face and kind eyes beneath a fur cap. "Your man is in a bad way, miss," he said, taking in Adam's condition with a practiced eye. "We have a camp not far from here. Can he walk?" "I can walk," Adam mumbled, though he could barely stand without Violet's support. The second stranger joined them, a younger man who looked enough like the first to be his son. "Pa, they're fallen back," he reported, nodding toward the western bank where Dalton's men were indeed retreating up the slope. "They will be back," the older man said grimly. "With reinforcements, likely. We need to move." Between Violet and the two strangers, they managed to get Adam to his feet. The older man led the way through the trees, moving with the confidence of someone who knew the terrain well. "I am Violet Lawson," Violet said as they walked. "This is Adam Everett. We are in your debt, sir." "Samuel Johnson," the man replied. "This is my boy Thomas. No debt needed, miss. We don't hold with men hunting people through the wilderness like animals." "How did you know we needed help?" Violet asked, adjusting her grip on Adam, whose steps were becoming more stumbling with each passing minute. "Heard the shots," Samuel said simply. "Came to investigate. Thomas has eyes like a hawk, spotted you two crossing the ice with those men in pursuit. Wasn't hard to figure out which side needed helping. Their camp proved to be a small, well-hidden clearing about a mile from the stream. Two sturdy tents were pitched beneath the shelter of massive pines, and a fire burned in a stone-lined pit, the smoke dispersed by the branches above. "Get him by the fire," Samuel instructed as they entered the clearing. "Thomas, fetch the medical kit and some dry clothes." They eased Adam down near the flames. He was barely conscious now, his skin clammy and cold to the touch. Violet worked quickly to remove his wet clothing while Samuel examined the bullet wound. "Clean through," the older man observed. "That's something, at least, but he's lost a lot of blood and the cold water didn't help matters." Thomas returned with supplies, and together the three of them worked to save Adam's life. They dried him, dressed him in warm, dry clothing, treated and bandaged his wound, and wrapped him in blankets before the fire. Samuel produced a flask of whiskey, lifting Adam's head to help him drink a small amount. "For the pain," he explained to Violet, who nodded gratefully. Once Adam was as comfortable as they could make him, Samuel turned to Violet. "Now, miss, you're half frozen yourself. Thomas will turn his back while you change into these." He handed her a bundle of clothing, men's garments, but dry and clean. Violet changed quickly, too exhausted and worried about Adam to feel self-conscious. The clothes were too large but warm, and she sank down beside Adam with relief, taking his cold hand in hers. "He is going to be all right, is he not?" she asked Samuel, not bothering to hide the fear in her voice. The older man's face was grave but not without hope. "He's strong, and the wound itself isn't life-threatening. The blood loss and exposure are my concerns, but we'll do everything we can for him." Thomas approached with a mug of hot coffee laced with something stronger. "Drink this, miss. It'll warm you from the inside." Violet accepted gratefully, letting the heat of the mug seep into her chilled fingers before taking a sip. The liquor burned pleasantly down her throat, spreading warmth through her chest. "Thank you," she said simply. "Both of you. Without your help we would not have survived." Samuel settled on a log across the fire, his weathered face thoughtful. "Mind if I ask what brought you two out here with armed men on your trail? Not many women venture into these mountains in winter." Violet hesitated only briefly before deciding these men who had risked their lives to help strangers deserved the truth. She told them everything: her father's murder, her flight, Adam finding her wounded in the snow, their weeks together in his cabin, and finally Dalton's men tracking them down. "Dalton," Samuel spat the name like a curse. "Victor Dalton," Violet nodded. "You know of him?" "Every man with land in these parts knows Dalton," Samuel said grimly. "He's been buying up water rights across 3 territories, forcing out small ranchers and farmers. Those who won't sell often meet with accidents." He glanced at Adam's unconscious form. "Your man was right to get you out when he did. Dalton's hunters don't give up easy." "They will come looking for us," Violet said, the brief sense of safety already fading. Samuel nodded. "Likely so. But they won't find us here. We know how to stay hidden. And tomorrow we'll move on. We were headed to Cheyenne ourselves. From there you can catch a train to Denver." "Why are you helping us?" Violet asked, genuinely curious. "You are risking much for strangers." Samuel's eyes grew distant. 3 years ago, my brother refused to sell his ranch to Dalton. A week later, his house burned down with him and his wife inside. The authorities called it an accident. His jaw tightened. It wasn't. Since then, Thomas and I have helped others who have crossed Dalton's path. It's not much against a man of his power, but it's something. It is everything to us, Violet said softly. Adam stirred beside her, his eyes fluttering open. Violet, his voice was weak but clear. I am here, she assured him, squeezing his hand. We are safe. These men helped us. Adam's gaze moved to Samuel, then Thomas. Thank you, he managed. Save your strength, son, Samuel advised. You've got some healing to do before we move on. Adam nodded slightly, his eyes already closing again. But his fingers tightened around Violet's, a reassurance that meant more than words could express. That night, as Adam slept fitfully beside her in Thomas's tent, Violet found herself thinking of the strange paths that had brought them to this moment. From terror and blood in the snow to love in a wilderness cabin, and now to this unexpected sanctuary with unlikely allies. It seemed almost like a story someone else might tell, too unlikely to be real. Yet it was real as Adam's breathing beside her, as real as the ache in her tired muscles, as real as the love that had bloomed between them against all odds. And somehow, despite everything, Violet found herself grateful for the journey, for every step that had led her to this man and this moment. Morning brought clear skies and a marked improvement in Adam's condition. The fever Samuel had feared had not materialized, and though Adam was weak from blood loss, his mind was clear and his determination to continue their journey undiminished. We need to reach Denver, he insisted when Samuel suggested they rest another day. Violet's testimony is the key to bringing Dalton to justice. Every day we delay gives him more opportunity to cover his tracks. Samuel nodded, respecting the younger man's resolve. If you're certain you can travel, we'll break camp after breakfast. It's 2 days to Cheyenne if we push hard. They set out an hour later, Samuel and Thomas leading the way through terrain they clearly knew intimately. Adam rode double with Violet on Samuel's spare horse, his wounded arm secured in a sling fashioned from a torn shirt. Though he tried to hide it, Violet could feel the tension in his body, the pain each jolting step caused him. "We can stop if you need to rest," she murmured, her back pressed against his chest as she guided the horse along the narrow trail. "I will be fine," Adam assured her, his good arm tightening around her waist. "Worry about yourself, Violet. You have been through just as much." The journey was arduous but uneventful. They saw no sign of Dalton's men, though Samuel remained vigilant, frequently stopping to check their back trail and listen for pursuit. They traveled well into the evening, making camp only when the light failed completely, and were on the move again at first light. By the afternoon of the second day, Adam's strength was flagging visibly. When they stopped to rest the horses by a small stream, Violet found him leaning against a tree, his face gray with exhaustion and pain. "We are pushing too hard," she said to Samuel, who nodded in agreement. "Cheyenne is less than 5 miles now," the older man said. "There's a doctor there I trust, not one of Dalton's men. He can look after Adam properly while you rest before continuing to Denver." True to his word, they reached Cheyenne as the sun was setting. Samuel led them not to the main streets of the growing town, but to a modest house on its outskirts. "Dr. Wilson is an old friend," he explained as they dismounted. "He'll help without asking too many questions." The doctor proved to be a gruff but competent man in his 60s, who took one look at Adam and ushered him inside without preamble. "Bullet wound, exposure, exhaustion," he muttered, helping Adam to a small examining room. "You've been rough on yourself, young man." While the doctor tended to Adam, Samuel made arrangements for their journey to Denver. "Train leaves tomorrow at noon," he reported when he returned. "I've secured tickets for you both and sent a telegram to your uncle in Denver, Miss Lawson. Didn't give details, just said to expect you and that it concerns your father." Gratitude overwhelmed Violet. "How can we ever repay you?" Samuel's weathered face creased in a smile. "Bring Dalton down. That's payment enough." He hesitated, then added, "Thomas and I will be moving on tonight. Better for all concerned if we're not seen together too much. Dalton has eyes everywhere." "You are not coming to Denver with us?" Violet asked, surprised. Samuel shook his head. "Our work is here, helping others Dalton has targeted. But you'll be safe on the train, and your uncle will protect you in Denver." That evening, after Samuel and Thomas had departed with heartfelt farewells and promises to meet again under better circumstances, Violet sat by Adam's bedside in the small guest room Dr. Wilson had prepared for them. Adam was sleeping peacefully, the proper medical care and clean bandages having worked wonders for his condition. In sleep, the lines of pain and worry that had marked his face for days were smoothed away, making him look younger, almost boyish. Violet reached out to brush a strand of hair from his forehead, her touch gentle so as not to wake him. Tomorrow they would board a train for Denver, the first step toward justice for her father and, perhaps, a new beginning for them both. Yet beneath her determination, a thread of fear remained. Dalton was powerful, with connections throughout the territories. Even with her uncle's legal expertise, would her testimony be enough? And what of afterward? Would Dalton's reach extend even to a conviction? Would she and Adam ever truly be safe? As if sensing her troubled thoughts, Adam's eyes opened, finding hers immediately. "You should be resting," he said softly. "I was thinking," she admitted, "about tomorrow, about everything, about what happens after Denver." Adam shifted, wincing slightly as the movement disturbed his wounded shoulder. "Are you having doubts about testifying?" "No," Violet said firmly. "I will see justice done for my father if it is the last thing I do. I am thinking about what comes after for us." A smile touched Adam's lips. "I've been thinking about that too." With his good hand, he reached for hers. "I know I have little to offer you, Violet. My cabin is humble, my life simple." "Stop," she interrupted gently. "I do not want grand houses or fine things. I want a life with meaning, with purpose, with love." She squeezed his hand. "With you, even knowing the dangers, Dalton may never stop hunting us." "Then we will face that together," Violet said with quiet certainty. "Besides, once he is brought to justice, even then," Adam cautioned, "men like Dalton have friends, allies who may seek revenge." Violet considered this. "Then perhaps we start fresh somewhere else, California perhaps, or Oregon, somewhere Dalton's shadow does not reach." Hope kindled in Adam's eyes. "You would leave everything behind, start anew with me." "What is there to leave?" Violet asked simply. "My home is ashes. My father is gone. You are all I have in this world, Adam Everett." She leaned forward, pressing her lips gently to his. "And you are all I need." Adam's good arm came around her, drawing her closer. "When this is over," he murmured against her hair, "when Dalton faces justice, I want to make a proper life with you, Violet, as husband and wife." Joy bloomed in Violet's chest, bright and warm. "Are you asking me to marry you, Mr. Everett?" His smile was tender. "I believe I am, Miss Lawson. Though it is hardly the romantic proposal you deserve, me lying in a sick, both of us fugitives." Violet laughed softly. "I think it is perfectly fitting, given how we met, and my answer is yes, of course, 1,000 times yes." Their journey to Denver the next day passed without incident. The train was a marvel to Violet, who had never traveled by rail before. Despite the circumstances, she found herself enjoying the novel experience, the changing landscape outside the window, and most of all, the hours of uninterrupted time with Adam, free from immediate danger for the first time in weeks. Adam, too, seemed to relax as the miles passed, the haunted look that had shadowed his eyes gradually giving way to one of cautious optimism. They spoke of small things, favorite books, childhood memories, hopes for the future, as if trying on the normalcy they both craved. Denver, when they arrived, was a bustling city that made Violet's head spin after so long in the wilderness. Her uncle, Harold Lawson, met them at the station, a tall, austere man with kind eyes that immediately filled with tears when he saw his niece. "Violet," he said, embracing her carefully. "My dear girl, when I received the telegram, I hardly dared believe it after what happened to your father." He trailed off, his gaze moving to Adam, who stood respectfully to one side. "And you must be Mr. Everett. The telegram mentioned you were traveling together." "Adam saved my life, Uncle Harold," Violet said, taking Adam's hand and drawing him forward. "More than once. And we are to be married." Surprise flickered across her uncle's face, followed by a thoughtful assessment of the man beside her. Whatever he saw in Adam's steady gaze must have satisfied him, for he extended his hand. "Then it seems I owe you a great debt, Mr. Everett. Welcome to the family." The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Harold Lawson was indeed a well-respected lawyer, with connections throughout the Colorado Territory. He listened gravely to Violet's account of her father's murder, taking meticulous notes and asking pointed questions. When she had finished, his expression was grim but determined. "This will not be easy," he warned. "Dalton's influence extends even here, but your testimony combined with evidence I have been gathering since your father's death may be enough." "What evidence?" Violet asked, surprised. "Your father wrote to me," Harold explained. "He was suspicious of Dalton's intentions, worried about threats that had been made. I advised him to document everything, which he did. He sent me copies of correspondence, notes of conversations, details of the increasing pressure Dalton was applying." He shook his head sadly. "I urged him to leave to come to Denver where I could protect him. He refused." "He loved that land," Violet said softly. "It was where my mother is buried." Harold nodded in understanding. "In any case, we have more than just your word against Dalton's." "Not enough for a guaranteed conviction, perhaps, but enough to bring charges and create a public scandal that could damage him significantly." "When do we begin?" Adam asked, his voice steady despite the pallor that still marked his features from his injury. "I have already set things in motion," Harold said. "Telegrams to the territorial governor, to the marshal in Cheyenne, to newspaper editors I trust. Dalton will know by now that we are moving against him. He will fight back with everything he has." "Let him," Violet said, a steely note in her voice that made both men look at her with surprise. "I am not afraid anymore." The legal proceedings that followed were exhausting and often frustrating. Dalton's lawyers used every tactic to delay, to discredit, to dismiss. But Harold Lawson proved to be a formidable opponent, methodically building a case that even Dalton's money and influence could not easily dismantle. Through it all, Adam was Violet's rock. Though still recovering from his wound, he insisted on accompanying her to every meeting, every deposition, standing protectively at her side as she relived the most traumatic night of her life again and again for various officials. In the evenings, they would return to Harold's comfortable home, where Adam was quickly becoming more than just a guest. Violet's uncle had taken a genuine liking to the quiet, thoughtful man his niece had chosen, often engaging him in long conversations about everything from politics to literature, late into the night. "Your young man is quite remarkable," Harold commented to Violet one evening as they prepared dinner while Adam rested upstairs. Not many men would have risked what he did for a stranger. "He is the best man I have ever known," Violet said simply. "After father, of course." Harold smiled. "Your father would have approved, I think, despite the unusual circumstances." 3 weeks after their arrival in Denver, the territorial court issued a warrant for Victor Dalton's arrest on charges of conspiracy to commit murder, among other crimes. The news reached them via a jubilant Harold who burst into the house waving a telegram. "They have him," he announced. "Arrested this morning at his ranch. His men are being rounded up as well, including the 3 who were hunting you." Relief washed over Violet like a physical force, leaving her weak-kneed. Adam steadied her with a hand at her elbow, his own expression a mixture of disbelief and cautious joy. "Is it really over?" she whispered. "Not quite," Harold cautioned. "There will be a trial. You will need to testify." "But yes, the worst is behind you now." That night, alone in the bedroom Harold had given her, Violet sat by the window gazing at the stars that seemed somehow brighter than they had been before. A soft knock at her door roused her from her thoughts. "Come in," she called, expecting her uncle with some new development. Instead, Adam entered, looking uncharacteristically nervous. He had changed for bed, wearing only trousers and a loose shirt that revealed the bandage still wrapping his healing shoulder. "I hope I am not disturbing you," he said, remaining by the door. "I wanted to talk to you alone." Violet rose, crossing to him with a smile. "You are never disturbing, Adam. What is it?" He took her hands in his. "Now that Dalton has been arrested, now that you are safe." He hesitated, then continued more firmly. "I want to make good on my promise, to marry you, to build a life together." Joy bubbled up inside Violet. "I want that too, more than anything." "I have been thinking," Adam said, leading her to sit on the edge of the bed, "about where we might go. Your uncle mentioned land for sale near here, good grazing land with water rights. With your share of your father's estate, which Harold believes can be recovered once Dalton is convicted, and my savings." "You want to start a ranch?" Violet asked, surprised. "I thought you preferred the solitude of your cabin." Adam's smile was rueful. "I thought I did too, but these weeks with you have shown me what I was really missing all those years alone, not just companionship but purpose, connection." He squeezed her hands. "I do not want to hide from the world anymore, Violet. I want to build something with you, something that will last." Tears of happiness sprang to Violet's eyes. "I would like that very much." "Your uncle has offered to help us get started," Adam continued. "He seems determined to keep you close after nearly losing you." Violet laughed softly. "He can be rather protective, but I would like to be near him as well." She sobered slightly. "What about your cabin? Your life there?" Adam shrugged his good shoulder. "The cabin will always be there if we want to visit. But it was never truly a home, just a place to hide from my memories. You have given me a reason to step back into the world, Violet. To build a real home, a real life." He kissed her then, a kiss full of promise and hope for the future they would create together. When they parted, Violet rested her forehead against his, savoring the moment. "When?" she asked simply. "As soon as the trial is over," Adam replied. "A fresh start." 2 months later, on a clear spring day with the Rocky Mountains standing sentinel in the distance, Violet Lawson became Violet Everett in a simple ceremony in her uncle's garden. Harold walked her down the aisle, his face beaming with pride and just a touch of wistful sadness that his brother could not be there to see his daughter's happiness. Adam waited for her beneath an arch of early roses, his blue eyes never leaving her face as she approached in a gown of ivory, silk, a gift from her uncle that had once belonged to her aunt. Gone was the haunted look that had shadowed Adam's gaze when they first met. In its place was a serene joy that made Violet's heart swell with love. The trial had concluded 2 weeks earlier with Dalton's conviction on all charges. Justice had been served, though nothing could bring back Violet's father or erase the trauma of that terrible night. Yet standing before Adam, promising to love him for all her days, Violet felt her father's presence as surely as if he stood beside her, giving his blessing to this union born from tragedy but built on love. Their new home awaited them, a modest ranch house on a promising stretch of land, 20 miles outside Denver. They had already begun to stock it with cattle, hired a few hands to help with the work, planted the beginnings of what would one day be an orchard much like the one Violet had grown up tending with her father. "I love you, Mrs. Everett," Adam whispered as they shared their first dance as husband and wife under the stars. "And I love you," Violet replied, her heart so full she thought it might burst. "From now until forever." As they moved together to music only they could hear, Violet thought of that snowy night that seemed a lifetime ago, of blood on pristine white, of a stranger's gentle hands binding her wounds, of being carried to warmth and safety in strong arms. She had been running for her life then, with no hope and no future she could imagine. Now, held secure in the embrace of the man who had saved her in more ways than one, Violet knew with absolute certainty that sometimes the darkest moments could lead to the brightest beginnings. That sometimes a trail of blood in the snow could become a path to the greatest love. Years later, on a summer evening as golden light bathed the prosperous ranch they had built together, Violet sat on the porch watching Adam teach their son to ride. 5-year-old James was the image of his father, with the same serious blue eyes and quiet determination. Their 3-year-old daughter, Elizabeth, named for the woman Adam had once loved and lost, played at Violet's feet, her dark curls bouncing as she arranged wooden animals in elaborate patterns. The sound of approaching hoofbeats drew Violet's attention. A rider appeared on the road leading to their home. Samuel Johnson, older now but still straight-backed and strong, his visits a welcome tradition whenever his travels brought him near Denver. Adam looked up, waving in greeting before lifting James from the pony and setting him on his shoulders. Together they came to meet their visitor, Elizabeth abandoning her toys to run after them, calling Uncle Sam, "Uncle Sam," in her high, sweet voice. Violet rose to join her family, her hand resting briefly on the slight swell of her abdomen, where their third child was just beginning to make its presence known. She watched as Samuel dismounted, clasping Adam's hand warmly before being nearly bowled over by the enthusiastic greetings of the children. This was what they had built from the ashes of tragedy, not just a home or a successful ranch, but a family, a community, a life rich with love and purpose. There were still nights when Violet woke gasping from nightmares of blood and snow and desperate flight. Still days when the shadow of the past fell across Adam's face, bringing back memories of battlefields and loss. But those moments grew fewer with each passing year, overshadowed by the joy they found in each other, in their children, in the life they had created together against all odds. As the evening light faded to dusk, as Samuel regaled the children with stories of his adventures, as Adam's arm slipped around her waist to pull her close against his side, Violet offered a silent prayer of gratitude for second chances, for unexpected rescues, for love that had the power to heal even the deepest wounds. And as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, she knew with absolute certainty that their story, begun in blood and fear and desperate courage, would continue to unfold in joy and hope and abiding love for all the days to come.